We are also hearing now reaction from congressional Republicans. House Speaker Paul Ryan says that more gun control isn't the answer.
Same time, let's make sure that we are not infringing upon a law-abiding citizen's Second Amendment rights.
So are you looking at legislation?
Speaker Ryan, on that Second Amendment rights, would curtailing the Second Amendment right of Americans to keep and bear arms protect this country from radical Islamic
That's a good question. So the question is going after the Second Amendment how you stop terrorism? No, that's not how you stop terrorism. We have a bill that's being voted on right now to go after homegrown jihadists. Let's not take our eye off the ball here. This is a person who is radicalized by Islamic radical terrorists. He claimed it was by ISIS. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on the real issue here, which is terrorism. The fact that people are becoming radicalized and committing these horrible acts of terrorism in our country. So not only do we need a better foreign policy, not only do we need a better policy with respect to Iraq and Syria and fighting terrorists and preventing ISIS from expanding and growing, we need to have a better job and a better handle on homegrown jihad and on combating the ideology itself. Again, a week ago, today, we rolled out a 67-point plan for a better national security to address these issues.
Speaker Ryan, the bill that you just brought up, Countering Terrorist Radicalization Act, now that authorizes DHS's countering violent extremism training. That particular training has been criticized for essentially training these federal agents to whitewash and put in like politically correct training, telling these agents that they can't investigate particularly suspects who may have Muslim backgrounds, saying that they can't look into people who may have certain faiths that may be Islamic. Is the GOP essentially condoning this?
No, I have concerns about this aspect of DHS, and one of the reasons why we delayed the markup of the Homeland Security bill in the Appropriations Committee is because we wanted to look at all of these issues to see if something needed to be improved in the appropriations process of Homeland Security, and that's one of our concerns.
Mr. Speaker, in the aftermath of Orlando, your party's presumptive nominee has, of course, renewed his call for the Muslim ban, which you have repeatedly rejected. If he continues to say controversial things that draw your concerns, do you envision any scenario in which you would rescind your endorsement?
That's not my plan. I don't have a plan to do that. Look, we're going to agree to disagree on some things. That's just the way things work. Mitt Romney and I didn't agree on everything. What we do agree on is we don't want another Democrat in the White House, I can tell you that. And we do have a lot of common ground on a lot of things that we think will move us in a better way in this country. We don't agree on that. Everybody knows that. And you also know that if I'm asked a question, I'm going to answer it honestly. And if I'm asked a question about a proposal that I don't agree with, I'm going to say I don't agree with it. It's just that simple.
To that end, thank you, Mr. Speaker. But to that end, though, I mean, when you wake up in the morning and you read the paper, say, "Oh, there he goes again." You call it Brendan and Ashley and say, "Okay, I got to say this." I mean, how many more times can you do that realistically?
I don't know the answer to that question either.
But does that bother you that you have to keep doing this repeatedly?
He's a different kind of candidate. This is a different kind of year. I'm going to be myself and speak up in defense of our principles, in defense of not just our party's principles, but our country's principles. As conservatives, we want to conserve our founding principles: liberty, freedom, self-determination, our Bill of Rights. Those are very important principles. No matter what, we're going to defend those principles. I do, though, believe that the last thing we want is a Democrat in the White House like Hillary Clinton.
Speaker Ryan, do you have any response to his comments this week?
Wait, I'm sorry, you jumped ahead of me.
Mr. Speaker, one of the nuances, though, of the Orlando shooting is, and I guess the basic question is, should someone who may have been on a terror watch list and taken off of it, or have been investigated by the FBI, should that show up in a background check, or should it just be totally eliminated?
Yeah, so I think that's a fair question. We need to dig into the bottom of this particular case and to see if refinements on how they adjudicate these cases work. With respect to terror watch lists, we need to know more about what is it the FBI learned when they visited with him, why did they take him off the list. There's a lot that Congress has to do to get to the bottom of this particular case to make sure that if any mistakes were made, that they're not to be repeated. That's point number one. Point number two, we don't take away citizens' rights without due process. Again, I'm going to defend the Constitution here. We do not take away a citizen's rights without their due process. And so if you have a quick idea in the heat of a moment that says, let's take away a person's rights without their due process, we're gonna stand up and defend the Constitution.
Mr. Speaker, do you have any thoughts on John Cornyn's SHIELD Act, and have you had any discussions with Mitch McConnell about what they're doing?
I haven't talked with, I'm familiar with it, I haven't talked with Mitch about it in particular. I've talked with our members about it, I think there's a version of it floating around here in the House. This essentially codifies what the FBI already does. We think they should do what they do, and so I think we'll have further conversations about how to codify what the FBI does.
Last question.
Mr. Speaker, regarding the Constitution.
Wait, did you already ask one?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right, just
Talking
making
and chucking
sure.
in about an hour. Regarding the Constitution, the Republican nominee has revoked the credentials of the Washington Post. It's a pattern. He did it with the Des Moines Register, even the National Review, the conservative publication, other liberal publications, Mother Jones. What do you feel about the Republican nominee revoking credentials of really respected media?
Don't think I've ever heard of it before. I think that's a new one. I don't know a whole lot about it. I hope and assume that this will get worked out.
Hasn't so far.
Who's with the Post here, by the way? Is DeBotis here or no?
DeBonis, me.
Kane's here, okay. Last question.
Will you?
Yeah, you're our credential now.
If you,
DeBonis, where's
DeBonis,
there?
this morning, Mr. Speaker, you rolled out your plan to rein in executive power. Mr. Trump yesterday said this, addressing congressional leaders like yourself: be quiet, just please be quiet, don't talk. What is your reaction to that, and how do you have any confidence that this is a guy who's gonna have respect for separation of power?
You can't make this up sometimes. I'll just say, we represent a separate but equal branch of government. We just spent the morning talking about how valuable the separation of powers is, and how we're trying to restore the entire principle of self-government, of government by consent. We will lose our freedoms in this country, including all of the Bill of Rights, if we don't robustly defend the separation of powers, and we're going to fight for those rights on behalf of our citizens so that we remain a self-governing people. Let me leave it at that and say, make sure you call your dads this weekend. Thanks.